This is your daily update for May 21st. Let's go to our hosts, Saskia and Brandon.
Senate Republicans left Washington for Memorial Day recess Thursday without voting on a $72 billion immigration enforcement bill after a revolt over the Justice Department's new $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. The fund was created as part of a settlement resolving President Trump's lawsuit against the IRS over the leak of his tax returns and would compensate people who claim they were unfairly targeted by past Justice Departments. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche traveled to Capitol Hill Thursday to address senators' concerns, but the two-hour meeting failed to secure enough votes to proceed. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters the vote would be delayed until after the recess, saying the path forward became more complicated and bumpy than we had hoped for. Senator Susan Collins said Blanche did not change her mind, while Senator Thom Tillis threatened to vote against the entire reconciliation bill if the fund remained. A separate provision providing $1 billion in Secret Service funding tied to the White House Ballroom project was also expected to be stripped after the Senate parliamentarian ruled it violated chamber rules. The House canceled its Friday votes on the package, as Trump had set a June 1st deadline for its passage.
The USS Nimitz carrier strike group arrived in the Caribbean this week as the Trump administration escalated pressure on Cuba through military, legal, and diplomatic channels. U.S. Southern Command announced the deployment on Wednesday, calling the strike group the epitome of readiness and lethality. The same day, the Justice Department unveiled a federal indictment against former Cuban President Raul Castro, charging the 94-year-old with 7 counts including conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals and 4 counts of murder. The charges stem from the 1996 shootdown of 2 civilian aircraft flown by the Cuban exile group Brothers to the Rescue, which killed 4 people including 3 U.S. citizens. Acting Attorney General Blanche announced the indictment at Miami's Freedom Tower on Cuba's Independence Day. President Trump said Cuba was on our mind following the charges, and Cuba's current president Diaz-Canel condemned the indictment as exposing arrogance and frustration. CIA Director John Ratcliffe met Cuban officials on the island last week and warned that the window for diplomatic talks would not remain open indefinitely. The U.S. has imposed more than 240 sanctions on Cuba since January and intercepted at least 7 oil tankers bound for the island.
2 U.S. Capitol Police officers who defended the building during the January 6th riot filed a federal lawsuit Wednesday seeking to block the Trump administration's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Officers Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges argue the fund is unconstitutional, saying it violates the 14th Amendment by rewarding participants in an insurrection. The lawsuit states no federal statute authorizes the fund's creation and that the settlement underpinning it is a corrupt sham. The fund was created after Trump sued the IRS, of which he is the head, for $10 billion over the leak of his tax records, and then settled with himself. January 6th, defendant Jake Lang publicly confirmed he plans to apply, saying misdemeanor cases could receive hundreds of thousands of dollars and some cases could see $1 million or more. Acting Attorney General Blanche and Vice President Vance did not rule out payments to riot participants when pressed by reporters and lawmakers. A DOJ spokeswoman responded by calling the lawsuit itself an act of brazen weaponization of federal resources.
The Democratic National Committee released its long-awaited autopsy of the 2024 election Thursday, with DNC Chair Ken Martin simultaneously publishing and repudiating the document. Martin said the 192-page report, written by Democratic consultant Paul Rivera, was incomplete, contained unverified claims, and does not meet my standards. He released it anyway, saying continued secrecy had become a bigger distraction than the report's flaws. A key finding is that the Biden White House did not position or prepare then Vice President Kamala Harris to help govern, with Biden's name appearing only a handful of times. The report also says the campaign failed to quickly define Harris beyond "not Trump" and incorrectly assumed Trump's negatives were already baked in with voters. The document contains factual errors, including misidentifying how many gubernatorial races Democrats won in 2024 and incorrectly describing the voting history of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Harris lost every presidential battleground state to Trump, who became the first Republican in 20 years to win the popular vote.
Grocery prices rose 2.9% in April compared to a year earlier, the highest annual rate since August 2023, according to new government data. Tomato prices surged nearly 40% year over year, the steepest increase of any food category tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Beef was up 9% overall, with ground beef rising 15%, beef roasts up 18%, and steak up 16%. Coffee prices climbed roughly 19% compared to last spring, driven largely by tariffs and supply pressures on imported goods. The broader inflation picture also worsened, with overall inflation reaching 3.8%, its highest level since May 2023. Purdue University economists warn the full impact of rising energy costs from the Strait of Hormuz conflict has not yet reached grocery shelves, and those effects can take 3 to 6 months to filter through the supply chain. Eggs offered some relief, falling 39% compared to last year following the normalization of avian flu conditions.
James Murdoch's media and tech holding company Lupa Systems announced Wednesday it has agreed to acquire key Vox Media properties, including New York Magazine, Vox.com, and the Vox Media Podcast Network. The deal is reported to be worth more than $300 million, according to the New York Times, which cited anonymous sources. The acquired assets will operate as a subsidiary of Lupa Systems under the Vox Media name, with current CEO Jim Bankoff continuing to lead the company. The deal includes New York Magazine's digital brands such as The Cut, Vulture, Intelligencer, and Grub Street, as well as podcasts including Today Explained, Pivot, and Criminal. Properties not included in the deal, such as The Verge, Eater, SB Nation, and PopSugar, will split into a separate independent company. James Murdoch, the youngest son of Rupert Murdoch, publicly broke from his family's media empire in 2020 over editorial disagreements and has since pursued independent media investments. The deal was announced hours after New York Magazine won the National Magazine Award for General Excellence from the American Society of Magazine Editors.
That is your daily news update. Thank you for